please come on over. Thank you so much. So yeah, once again, my name is Andrii Degeler. I am the head of media at The Next Web. We are a technology publication covering the European startup ecosystem, from startups to VCs to corporate innovators to policymakers. Today, we are here to talk about AI in product. I have a great set of panelists for you today. First, we have Hannah Gutkauf, Global Managing Partner at Manyone, which is an international design and business consultancy. Hannah is a strategic technologist and an expert in finding business-critical use cases for emergent technologies. She works with top-tier clients like IKEA, like Lego, like Walmart, Magic Leap, Microsoft. Magic Leap is interesting. I want to talk about it later, maybe.
I'm not allowed to say a lot right now.
There we go. But her areas of expertise include emerging technologies like VR and AR, also IoT and AI in digital touchpoints. Please give a round of applause to Hannah. Second for me is Pooja Naidu, VP of Product at Mews, which is a hospitality tech company that focuses on creating a remarkable experience for hoteliers and their guests. A product leader with over 20 years worth of experience in retail, media, banking, publishing, sports, and now hospitality. Give a round of applause to Pooja. Brilliant. Next up, Vidu Sharma, product lead generative AI at Adyen, a leading payment company based here in the Netherlands. Probably everyone knows what Adyen is. Vidu is discovering enduring and impactful ways to address diverse challenges through generative AI technology. Please give a round of applause to Vidu. And last but not least, Denzil Naggan, head of product at Road. Road is a technology company that is building the infrastructure that will power all of e-mobility, starting with charging infrastructure. With over 15 years of experience, Denzil advocates for design thinking principles and prioritizes human-centered design methodologies to elevate products from concept to market. He is also done his own across many industries, same as Pooja, including telecommunications, banking, SaaS, fintech, and regtech. So give a round of applause to Denzil. So this was a very, very quick round of introductions so that we can have almost 36 more minutes to talk about the actual AI in product in all the different companies that our panelists represent. So let's do an intro round of answering the first question, which would be, what AI feature or product are you most excited to have launched already, or maybe you're about to launch it? And what have you learned along the way from how customers are using those features? Hannah.
Big question. We've launched quite a lot of products for our customers at this point, none of which I can name. That's the most boring part. But for a very big retailer in the US, we launched a national-wide AI product. And what's so interesting is that it was not the tech capabilities that was the issue, it was the product market fit. So a big learning there was to really drill down on hero moments for your customers and then actually make sure that the technology is enabling that. So very much connected to what the talk before was about. And then I think a general trend I see is that we do a lot of knowledge indexing AI applications for very big companies. So just making it easier to access knowledge from across the organization that is usually quite siloed off, and creating some type of knowledge hub. And then now we're entering the era of scoring. So scoring specific productions, designs, knowledge pieces. I think that's now the next iteration after people having started to just play a little bit around with a lot of AI features.
Right, that's a really interesting one. Pooja, does it sound like your experience as well?
It does. I mean, when we think about AI products, or AI-driven products, rather, I would say, we don't only think about the external use, but internal use. So I'm going to play it back to what we did externally, but also internally as well. And externally, our role in Mews is to boost efficiency, staff efficiency at all of the hotels, and boost productivity. So to create that remarkable guest experience at the end of it. So back to what Joe was talking about earlier, just a few weeks ago, we launched our Smart Search, which you can imagine, you've got stream of people coming into hotels every single day, and that receptionist has to search for certain things to answer certain queries. So 100,000 searches possibly per day across our entire suite of 5,000 hotels, you can imagine. So with search, it's all about obviously the results that you get, navigating those results, and the next best action. It was one of the most used use cases in the hotel. So we focused on that to drive that user business need, right? And essentially, we created that smart search. It allows you to create filters. It allows you to save some of those filters and those most commonly used searches, so you can save that. Alongside that, though, come smart tips, which I'm really excited about. So Pooja loves red wine. Make sure that housekeeping put red wine in her minibar only. Pooja loves high-rise floors. Make sure she gets a high-rise floor that is possibly not next to the lift because she'll complain. She loves fluffy pillows. She loves a really firm mattress. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of those details, but essentially a guest can talk and interact with a hotel, talk to them about the things. Now, it doesn't stop there because the power is in connecting all that information and making sure that it goes to the right departments in the hotel. Internally, I'm very excited about some of the products that we've launched. So we have launched a chatbot, which is nothing new to a lot of people, but certainly in the support part of our business, we had thousands of tickets coming in, of mundane, usual asked questions. So now I'm proud to say we have reduced the case deflection, or we've increased case deflection by 70%,
wow,
which is massive. And if you think of the cost of an agent who is responding to that support ticket, and you multiply that, we've saved thousands of euros in that. But also, I don't know if you do a lot of hiring in your roles, but certainly as a product leader, I have to hire. We use MetaView, which if you haven't used it, it is such a powerful tool. So previously, it used to take me hours to create notes for all my candidates. Now it takes me less than 5 minutes. So there's lots of tools, content writing, release notes that we're doing internally, because I believe the power of this is not only external, it's also internal as well.
Right, no, absolutely. Thank you so much, Pooja.
No worries.
Vidu, what about your most exciting feature?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to pick on the same note from where Pooja mentioned. A lot of benefit lies in operational efficiencies, but at Adyen, right, when we think about our customers or our merchants, we want them to achieve their ambitions, 10x ambitions faster. And the moment you think about ambitions, you start to look inwards. You can do things internally that can help your merchant succeed. You can do things externally like new capabilities, fun stuff. I think we take that angle of starting with a company objective, and some of the things that my teams have done recently is low-hanging fruits, to be honest. That's where the practicality is. Routing tickets faster. What does that get you? In the long term, you reduce your mean time to ticket resolution. That's a key metric every CS organization tracks. And increasingly, we're looking at ways of, to what Joe said, have we earned the right to serve them more use cases before they can click the button and go to someone else? So I'll stop at that.
So is it mostly internal tools then for you?
That's the beginning of a lot of things we see going outside.
Right,
yes.
Great. Denzil, how about yourself?
Yep, so I guess similar takes from each of the people that have spoken before. So it's basically looking at the RegTech part. So if you look at the way that financial industry is moving, there's a lot new players in the market and a lot of different ways on how they want to do business. So transactions are being increasing like a hell of a lot more than they used to previously. So a lot of financial institutions have to monitor transactions, right, to avoid money laundering and then obviously the funding of terrorism, etc. So the software that we had was basically was a transaction monitoring tool, and we had to find a way to give the agents a bit of an edge to try and get through their like a huge backlog of alerts that actually gets generated. So similar to what Pooja was saying just now about kind of giving them the next best action, we had to do it in a way that you look at previously assessed alerts and then kind of create what would be the next best action and take the certain actions to a certain point as to where you then give the power back to the agent to actually make the decision as to how to go forward. Therefore, you're still within the regulatory bounds of giving them enough information to help get your more true positives on top of the list, and then also then giving you a lot of unneeded alerts to be filtered out much faster. So efficiency, filtering, next best action, pretty much the same thing here.
And how about external AI products? Have you created many?
So internally at the moment at Road, we have a 24/7 operation. So if someone is going out and charging in the middle of the night and their car gets, the actual charger gets stuck, we've got a chatbot now that can actually assist you with trying to unlock your car.
Help you with anger management?
Yeah, we need to get some of that. They say please and thank you sometimes, at least.
Perfect. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about, take a bit of a bird's eye view, if you will, and talk about how the AI decision-making works within companies, within your companies in this case. So staying with you, Denzil, for example, do you have an AI strategy in the organization? And if so, who actually owns it? Is it you?
No. Look, it starts off with you owning it. Someone has to initiate it at certain times. Previously, in my last company, it was started with myself, and there was a head of AI that we had. So like R&D team that was formed and actually did all of the different groundwork. Eventually, it became driven by the board. Once the AI hype picked up, it was very much...
What could possibly go wrong with that?
Yeah, of course, just do it tomorrow. And use AI to get it done by tomorrow. But yeah, eventually it became a case of executives taking over, driving the agenda. Helps sometimes to try and actually get the amount of resources you need, but also puts a lot of pressure on the business to actually fulfill those needs. In terms of ownership, at the moment, like at Road, it's kind of shared between all of the different organizations or different departments. Everyone has a different use case for it, right? But fundamentally, I think it's within the CTO that makes sure that the technology stack that each person uses or each department uses conforms to what you want to do as a company. And then it comes back to what Hannah and I spoke to earlier. It's about the build or buy. Do we have the capabilities in-house to actually build, or is there enough vendors out there that can fulfill what you need? So then that's the debate there, I guess.
Interesting. Hannah, what do you think? How is it for you? Because you're part of an agency that's a bit of a different structure.
Yeah, but it's interesting because we have a strategy, but then I also consult on what the organizational structure should be in other businesses. In our own, it's task force owned. So I'm owning the strategy, but then as part of my task force, I actually have our CEO, our CTO, and legal, because we constantly need to think about also, how will we disrupt ourselves? Our main business is customer experience and design. So obviously, as most of you know, that's something that is very heavily disrupted at the moment. So we're constantly trying to figure out how can we change in the next year, increase efficiency by 50% is our target, and increase excellence in a very human way. I think that's our Scandinavian value. Copenhagen-based, not Amsterdam-based. But then in other companies, I think what we often see is that, very much like what you said, it usually starts as a grassroots initiative, and then when the board gets too much external pressure from shareholders, depending on how big the firm is, suddenly there's a lot more business casing around it. And that's usually when either the CTO or head of, depending on how the company is structured. Now what we see in MasterCard, for example, they changed the entire organizational structure to now have a head of AI in the C-level. So you can really feel the pressure and importance of the agenda in a lot of the Fortune 500 companies. And it's very impact-driven, very much going for how fast can you create return on investment, often forgetting about capability stack internally.
Wow, yeah, this is a really interesting trend. Pooja, is that something that you see as well?
Well, I want to ask the audience, so how many of you, hands up, have an AI strategy in your company today? Not that many, right? And how many of you believe that it's one area of the business that owns that strategy? Hands up. I'm glad you've said that, right? Because this is what we're going through as well. So I believe that there needs to be expertise in your business in terms of people that actually know about these language models, can execute, but also can set the frameworks and governance around it. But I believe the actual AI strategy is owned by every single product team. And it should be in their objective to think about the unmet needs, as Joe was talking about, or the user needs, or the particular business cases that they need to drive through AI. And it's not a product, it's a tool, much like any other. So I believe that it should be baked into every product strategy or strategies across the business to think about their particular use cases and how they apply them.
Yeah, but at the same time, if everyone owns something, then no one owns it. Isn't
but
that the case?
that's what I mean. You need to have a central function that kind of owns the governing standards, but they can't do everything, right? We have a PM, we have an engineering team around it, but that PM is not going to know about every single use case across our entire R&D organization.
Absolutely not, yeah.
We've got 400 people plus in the R&D organization. So I believe what I like about what you've just said, Hannah, though, it sounds like there's a company-wide objective and an OKR around it. So maybe that's something that we all need to think about in terms of its application in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I think it's that famous product market fit. Like, what is your unfair advantage in the business?
Exactly.
Where does your future, what's your future value proposition, and then backcasting very actively from that and creating that bridge for the product teams.
Yeah, there
so
has to be that
what
bridge.
it means for them.
Absolutely.
Right. No, makes sense. Now, Vidu, your title is Product Lead Generative AI. Does it mean that you own the generative AI strategy within Adyen?
Not at all. To be honest.
Point made.
So like everyone said, right, the way I like to think about owning strategy is not all product managers can know about every area of your business. And depending on the size of your organization, if you're a scale-up, you have a few PMs, you speak to your customers, everybody knows everybody else, then it can be owned by 1, 2, or 3 individuals, so to speak. But as you grow as an organization, you go in business lines. Every PM or group of PMs in that business line has a specialized role. They they understand the customer problems very deeply, that me as, for example, a platform PM may not have a lot of insight to. But what I do know is the difference between using small language model versus large language models. So we have a collaboration. You tell me that you want to solve a particular problem, and I will tell you with the kind of solutions you can apply to that problem. And ultimately, the strategy is then devised around, okay, so we need to help customer service. This is their pain area, and this is the technology that will help get them there. LLMs are expensive to run. I mean, if you're reducing the time it takes to solve tickets, but you use all of that time, i.e. money, to burn GPUs, I don't see the balance in expediting something while paying somewhere else. I'd rather think of an overall strategy. That's where the company objectives comes in. If our strategy, for example, this year is to expedite customer outcomes, yes, improving support is one way to do that. There could be other ways, incentivize them, give them cheaper pricing, but then it shouldn't be a tooling problem, just like engineering, right? If you have a problem, you tell engineering leads what the problem is. They figure out Python versus Spark versus whatever, right? That's the approach we take. So yes, I don't own the strategy, but I damn as well make sure that I own the velocity of how fast we make it.
But is there a strategy at the same time?
Yes.
Good answer.
Good answer.
No, this is great. So I also had a question which was already partly answered, but I really wanted to still ask it. So how do you think, from your point of view, has AI changed your business, internally and externally? So I can already hear that there has been some structural changes, but like what else? What else do you notice when you think about it? Let's start with you, Hannah.
I mean, everything. A big part of our strategy is education, because I truly think that I only know so much. Every senior leader only knows so much. We need to give everyone in the organization the tools to be creative with artificial intelligence, both for themselves and for our clients. And also to take the fear out of it, to really communicate that you get to do extraordinary work if you can offset some of the more mundane work with AI. So in that sense, our day-to-day life has changed very, very significantly. We also have a very strong focus on AI. Our slogan of the agency is everything that is next for the last 4 years. So Gen AI was very much early in the picture, but we still think about also edge computing. And I think it's also important to take a step back every now and then and not get swept away by the hype. We also think about things like what's the design system for spatial computing, for example. So it's important, I think, every now and then to encourage learning, encourage change. All of our managers are asked to actually evaluate learning goals every year, so people are also accountable for their own learning journeys. That is co-created with us against our must-win battles, as we say. Wrong terminology, maybe, these days. But again, it's also healthy to not lose track of the bigger picture.
Absolutely. When we prepare to our podcast at TNW every week, we try to make sure that we don't only talk about AI all the time, because some people, and we also historically have been prone to that. Pooja, how about Mews? What's changed?
Well, I think the attitude has changed in terms of everyone. It's very cool, right? AI is cool. It's the new kid on the block, even though it's been around for much longer than we've been talking about it, actually. But I think internally we have this term which we use, which is called user disengagement, right? And that's really important for us. When I worked in sports tech, it was about the more engaged they are in your screens or your analytics, the better the ROI of your product. In Mews, it's about user disengagement. So the less time someone spends on their screens in a hotel, the better for us, the better for them, the better the remarkable experience.
That makes sense.
So I think, yeah, and now, all of a sudden, we're all thinking about user disengagement in a much more meaningful, tangible way with AI, right? It's made it more possible in terms of the opportunities. But the one advice I would give is don't boil the ocean with it, right? Start off small, start off with those use cases, the user needs in mind. Always start with the problem first. We're always taught that in product management. It's no different with AI. And I think the more that you can kind of have some objectives around it, some sort of cost-benefit analysis, the better the business case is going to be adhered to by everyone, including board, shareholders, etc. So we're very excited about it. We're very wary of it. And I'm sure we'll talk about ethical standards in a bit. But there's all of that to factor in mind, right? So I won't talk about that now. Maybe we'll use another topic. A lot of people have been talking about that today, including Todd and Joe. So
absolutely,
it's important.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, of course. I mean, it's a panel discussion. That's the whole point. We ask questions. Please go on.
Do you have clear learning guidelines? Because I feel like that's often missing in other organizations, that people don't feel empowered because there is a lack of, what can I do? I'm not a technologist. How do I engage?
I think we're producing them now because we've just learned about what we've put out there in the market, right? And actually, throughout that, those learnings have been shared, but the formalization, I think, is something that we should just make happen quite quickly. The laws, I've looked for frameworks, governance. We saw from this morning's presentation, laws are very mixed around this thing. As was with GDPR, I feel like we're coming into that wave of external validation as well as that internal validation. But start with your internal validation, you know, and bear in mind those guidelines. So we're formulating them now. And I think formalization is going to be key.
To Hannah's point, just like to add, one of the company values we have is a no blush policy. So basically what it means is, if you can explain it to your customer or your merchant or your colleague without blushing, it should be about right. So we use one of those principles in when we try to say, hey, can I play with a ChatGPT solution? But would you want to put your personal company data while trialing or writing an email response? Apply the no blush policy, because can you explain it to the CEO if something leaks? So I think, you know, some of the values and how you operate as a company is also very vital to the success of, you know, and learning as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And if we get to the initial question with you, Vidu, so I don't think Adyen has changed externally all that much due to AI, but is that the case indeed? And is that also the case internally?
I mean, it has changed in terms of customer expectations have evolved. If you look at the OGs of Gen AI, does anybody know who the OG might be, the originals?
You mean humans? Or?
No. Yes.
Just asking.
But if you look at Siri and Hello, you know, Hello Google, you know,
Yeah.
they've always been responding to you in generative ways. Hey, Google, what's the temperature? It can very well say 15 degrees, but it says, hey, Vidu, good morning, today's temperature. That has been there for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
So companies have started to expect those interactions in their day-to-day because they've been so exposed to it for a very long time. So Adyen is evolving, so are our customers. So.
Absolutely. Denzil, how about you?
Yeah, look, internally, I think it's it's still a bit of a scale-up we are. So there's a lot of manual processes that comes with that as you scale up. And I think a lot of RPA has been used internally to actually get a lot of that menial tasks away from the staff, which then actually allows them to grow in other areas. So I think we're trying to use it in ways that actually allows us to, just to focus on more important matters at the moment. And it's different ways that we're doing it. Like sales teams, for example, are being able to respond to tenders from different parts of Europe, translating it, understanding what the needs are, responding in that way. Marketing briefs are translated using like certain tools like DeepL or DeepL. There's a debate on how you pronounce it. Yeah, and then within product itself, there's the building blocks of actually having like proper data, and we don't have that at the moment. So that's actually something that we are making sure that we're getting good quality data into our data team. We're building up the data team, making sure that we can actually start making decisions based on that data. And then in future, when we actually start looking at proper use cases that we want to solve and proper customer problems, then we will start using that. But at the moment, if we don't actually have a customer, like proper big problem that we're trying to solve for a customer, we're not going to force it until it's needed.
But it's expensive as well, right?
Yeah.
So at what point are we all, as product managers or designers or engineers, going to start getting asked for business cases around it? That's what we've got to think about. It's expensive, so how can you justify the value and the return on investment?
Absolutely. Yeah. Denzil, so and as you're building up these capabilities, do you also keep the ethical implications in mind? So do you know already how you're going to approach those?
Yeah. So luckily, we are only operating within Europe, so that actually helps us a lot in terms of those sort of laws.
All hail the AI Act.
Yeah, wait until that comes. But I mean, if you look at previous organizations, when I was at Fenergo, we were dealing with banks around the world. So there was a very much of like making sure that, hey, is my data going to be stored in a particular location? That, and then also, because it was a SaaS business, so you're making sure that everything is actually sitting with my tenants only, and anything that you feed an AI model is based on my data, purely my data. So those are the certain ways in which we had to find working within the ethical boundaries of, looking at what's from a regulatory point of view, meeting those standards, giving customers quite a lot of comfort in knowing that anything that you have as an output from an AI-generated model will actually come through from your actual data. So we're not going to impose anything on your data itself. Whatever you feed in is what is actually going to come out of it as well.
Yeah, but one way or the other, you do have to train the model on more data than just this customer's data. So, for example, are you going to have any sort of rules and guidance about what data you want to have the models to be trained on, like how it's collected and so on?
So there'll be a step before. So basically, the way that we had done it was there was a AI detection model looking at rules that's going through. So you'd have basic understanding of how the industry works. And if there's certain rules, like for high velocity of deposit, for example, if you had to look across all of your different customers, you'd be able to use that as a very generic rule to apply for all of your different customers. So fintechs, banking, enterprise banking, whichever it is, that can be reused quite nicely. But when it comes to customization of how you want to analyze those rules and what's most important to you, that's where the segregation comes in. And that's where it's very personalized to that industry or that particular business.
Right. Pooja, no AI Act in the UK. So what kind of
We're
ethical...
always the last, aren't we? So for us, it's about not training the models with personal information because we collect data on behalf of all the hotels. They also collect this data. We have access to that, so no personal information. And I don't know if any of you guys have got on the Apple Intelligence bandwagon, right? It is exciting. I saw, we're going to send this out later, but I saw an interesting talk with Tim Cook, who is kind of talking about the security protocols that they've had to put in place with private cloud compute. And if you kind of look at all of that, you've got to look at the data that you're working with first of all, and make sure that that information is transparent, but it's not transparent in a way that you know what you're doing with it. No personal information. There's good security protocols around it. and just making sure that there's no misinformation and bias. That's hard, right? Because you could actually mess up, certainly in fintech, fraud detection and things like that. You would probably not use it for those kind of areas. So you've just got to make sure that you deal with it in a fair, transparent way. And for us, it was also about not distracting our users, because it can be a distracting tool, right? So making sure that the output was not or the input rather, was not distracting for your front office agent who had 5 minutes to spare and decided to just throw a few queries in there. So there was a lot of those implications that we had to think about as well.
But do you also have a way of making sure that, for example, the large language model that you're using was only trained on licensed data? Is that something that you're thinking about?
I think she desperately wants to talk about this, so I'm going to pass over to Hannah, actually.
No.
We could all
I'm
chip
just
in.
trying to think about what I can say for what kind. But I think realistically, not every company can afford to build and train a large language model. So
not at this point, at least.
No. So almost everybody in some form or shape is using a pre-trained model, and then maybe you're working with fine-tuning to make sure it's very specific for your use case. So it's, I think, really, really crucial to make sure that the company and the product owner understands the risk profile of using the different technologies and different models. Also, we do sensibility training, so we actually show usually our product teams the same request or the same query with different models to showcase visually how different it's architected and how much you need to counteract some of these biases. OpenAI is not great, just saying, and it's performing usually pretty poorly. But you can, of course. And then it's more about making sure you build the guardrails, so the guardrails are specific to your use case, to your business areas. And then it really depends on what data you're using, both for the AI Act, but also human decency. Are you working with medical data, private data, or is it more industry-wide data? And there you can be a lot more large. I think another interesting thing that we do more and more with our clients is more shadow testing. So you use real data to basically create fake data and then create archetypes of specific customer profiles. So it's easier for the product teams to quickly test specific features or designs against your specific archetype or segment that you want to test against, without necessarily having to be too worried about specific data. So there's a lot of creative ways around it, but it's just really important. Again, it's more about education, and I think it's great if sometimes it's the best to build a custom model, or the other thing that we're going to see more and more is this like beautiful chain of like different solutions, and something is built and something is in-house, and it's basically now we also, for one company, we have like a small ethics model that actually just checks outputs of other generated content, just to make sure it actually aligns with the company's values.
Yeah. That's what we just heard from the previous speaker, right? This orchestrator
Exactly.
kind of model. That's exactly what it would be. Perfect.
Sometimes it's just machine learning, simple, just automation.
Vidu, do you actually use any like off-the-shelf models at this point, and what is your approach to ethics considerations?
I think I'll give you maybe a different example. Anybody in the crowd has kids? Yeah. So kids are like, the ethical considerations of mankind. When you leave a toddler at the park, though you train them, don't pick others' football or don't steal their bike, they would still try to go and do that. And at that point, you would stop them. The guardrails are you would speak to them politely. They would throw a tantrum. You would be more stronger in your approach. They will still throw tantrum. And ultimately, you'll just extract them and take them home, right? If you think about AI and ethics, some of it is like that. You put a set of guidelines. You start with a small model or a small use case. Human in the loop, you must have heard of that term more frequently. And once you start getting some kind of input, either you progressively stay away and see how it evolves, or you have to interject yourself in to go, stop, this doesn't make sense, because the output is, digressing from the expected outcomes. So one of the things that we did at Adyen is when we were looking at these ticket routing solutions internally, we had a whole bunch of champions from the support team give us almost real-time feedback. And we knew that this would not scale at a certain point. We can't have support people coming and sitting with us all day because they have day jobs. So we figured out, hey, how can we implement? How do we implement, a human in the loop to get the feedback on the quality of tickets being routed versus taxonomy being used, and things that are ending up in the wrong queue? Because if you look at, from customer service generally, a right ticket in the right queue gets picked up faster. A right ticket in the wrong queue might take just a few hours to reach the right place. And then you've already hit your SLAs by that point. So we tried with smaller models. We tried with human-in-the-loop approaches. We're doing well so far, but then as we scale through multiple departments, we need to figure out a sustainable approach. And we're learning as we go. So yeah, the kid is still out there somewhere.
So when your large language model is trying to steal someone else's bike, stop it.
Yeah.
And it will ignore you once or twice.
Yes.
I mean, that's the other thing.
That's when the parent, in this case, is the chief CRO, the legal officer. They'll be like, please, else we all go back home. So.
Exactly. Okay, we don't have a lot of time, but I still wanted to have like a real quick another round of answers to another question. How do you manage internal expectations when you are building AI products? And that also goes well together with the previous point made about the board getting involved, the C-suite getting involved as the hype is getting stronger. So any particular applicable tips for internal expectation management around AI? Hannah?
It depends on the type of company and the type of conversation. Is it with business leaders in a company? Then it's very much about what is the risk profile that they have for disruption. So being very specific about what is the investment you're willing to take and what are the capabilities you have. So being really also strict on, well, are you set up to do this? And if not, how do we make sure to get you there? Or do you really don't want to get there and you want a great marketing story, which is also good, but let's be clear about that. Internally, I think it's really important to, again, raise the education and also manage expectations. It just takes a little while to actually roll out, and I think the other thing is people expect magic and things to function right away, but it won't function right away. In order to create excellence with anything AI in product, it's really important to have that feedback loop and testing phases and iterations. So also making sure to communicate to the entirety of the organization that it's going to be a very incremental process. But I'm really lucky everybody is just psyched on our end.
And did you really ever get that honest response like, yeah, no, it's just going to be a marketing stunt, don't think about it?
And then we did like a super fun marketing thing, which was also fun.
Or what you could also do is tell them it's going to be a marketing stunt, and they might get excited. So the one thing that I've at least realized is you just need to have a chat. I know it's easier said than done, but what's worked for me in many situations is, can we chat? I'm thinking about something, or somebody has a great idea. It's just making those connections, right? As you grow as an organization with multiple lines of business, you would increasingly see that we hide behind emails or Slack or whatever tool of choice is without having a sit-down conversation. So I spend a lot of time just having a chat. What does this mean? Or what this doesn't mean? I think that's help. And obviously, the PM craft around writing great PRDs, one-pagers definitely goes along the way, but just have a chat.
Sounds great. Pooja?
I think for me, it goes back to Todd's point earlier, which was it's a tool to allow product teams to kind of find the best use cases. I've mentioned it many times, but I don't want my product teams to have the strategy played to them. So I'm encouraging this bottom-up approach of think about what specific use cases you have, and then generate that and bake that into your conversations. Bake that into, can you make that a lot faster? Also the testing cycle. So we test a lot internally when we've used generative AI. It's really important, bake that testing time in. Bake in the fact that it's going to take a while for these language models to kind of learn. And it's not a silver bullet, it's not magic, right? So don't think that it can happen tomorrow and it's going to solve the world. So just simple basics, baking in time, conversation, and the right bottom-up strategy as well.
It definitely did feel like magic when it just arrived, remember that?
Well, it has been a while.
It has indeed.
I think it's magic.
Yeah, it's very powerful. But with great power comes what? Great responsibility.
Yes, that's what I was about
So,
to say.
And big bills.
exactly.
And more GPUs, yeah.
There we go. Now, Denzil, internal expectation management.
Yeah. Be very, very clear in what your objective is for that particular use case. So you'll have a use case, but you'll have an objective that you are trying to achieve. If you can explain that very clearly and let people know that it's only going to do this particular thing, that is what you will monitor it to. And then kind of like maybe using your baby or your kid analogy, but like as a kid grows up, you know, it's now walking. Hey, it's now talking. Kind of give people updates all the time as to what it's doing. So you can then at some stage, you know, change your marketing or change the actual approach when it comes to sales to say, okay, we're ready to sell this now, or actually productize it, yeah? So that's how it's
treat it like a family chat, just
so
send those kids videos all the time.
Yeah. Look, honestly, product demos help a lot because it gives you that full, like, okay, I can see what it's doing. Text doesn't really help you because you can read about something, and until you actually see it happening, like looking at Joe's video, that's brilliant. You know, that's what you want to kind of show.
Yeah,
and then
perfect.
you can't deviate
Show
from
them
that. You
tell.
can't make up your own stuff and say, no, I think it does that. It's like, no, it does this particular thing.
I was about to say, I think one thing is managing expectations, but then also creating that strategic bridge to translation into the every now and then for the product teams. So in big organizations, you require change. You ask your product teams to change and do something else, learn something different, and change is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's uncertain. So being empathetic and making that journey, I think, exciting is really important. So have one very clear visual vision of what's the desirable future for our customers that we're all fighting to achieve. And then making sure that it's kind of backtracked into the reality of the here and now, because usually there's this AI task force, like the 5 people that actually have a degree in this, and then they come up with a demo, but then also making sure to, again, do that translation. What does that mean for someone working in customer excellence? Do they have to contribute to this? And I think they probably will in the future.
Yeah.
So.
Should. Definitely should.
And I think just embrace it. Everyone talks about disruptive technology. I don't see it as disruption, actually. I see it as a very powerful, enhancing tool for productivity, efficiency, etc. So just embrace it. It's here to stay. It is one of the fastest developing technologies we've ever seen. And just embrace it. Don't see it as a disruption to your business at all.
Right. AI is your friend.
Yes.
Perfect. Now, before we go, one thing that we also did, as we wanted to make this panel discussion as actionable, as applicable for everyone in the room, we also asked everyone on the panel to share a couple of links to whatever articles, materials, books, videos, interviews that they think are most useful for people to watch or read on the topic of AI in their organizations. And we will share this list of links in a upcoming communication from MTP and Pendo. So look for that in your inbox. In the meantime, please give another round of applause to our great panel. Hannah, Pooja, Vidu, Denzil, thank you so much for being here.
And the host.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.